Mhm.
You can begin. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to call the order to the Safety and Security Committee meeting for Thursday, May 1st, 2025. Ms. Bennett, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Simmons,
Present.
Commissioner Cox,
Here.
Commissioner Galladay, Commissioner Gladney, Commissioner Johnson, Commissioner Jackson Jennings,
Present.
Commissioner
Commissioner
Beach.
Galladay is here.
Thank you, so noted. Commissioner Beach
Here.
and Commissioner Moore. You can proceed.
All right, thank you. Ms. Bennett, can you report on any public comments that were received for the meeting?
Yes, Chair, there were no public comments submitted for today's meeting.
Fine, thank you. The minutes have been provided to the committee for review. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All those in favor? Have a motion?
Aye. Aye.
Second?
So moved.
Second.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion's passed. This time I'll ask Kevin Scott for comments on the St. Louis City Police contract extension for the Metrolink Police Service.
Sure. Good morning, Commissioners. Mr. Chairman, thank you for this opportunity to present this agreement. So as a historical review, and as a reminder, we have three primary law enforcement agreements relative to Metro Transit. We have St. Louis County, the City of St. Louis, which is the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, and then St. Clair County Sheriff's Department. We also, from time to time, will talk about secondary or off-duty law enforcement support. That is not what's entailed here. This particular agreement is relative to the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, and it is specific to our primary full-time Metrolink participation from that organization. So what we have is presented in front of you today for consideration for the full board, hopefully for approval, is a one-year extension or Amendment 3 to our current agreement. This new agreement reflects a realistic manpower allocation, what the City Police Department is able to provide us moving forward through retirements and attrition. The reality is we would go from having one lieutenant, one sergeant, and 7 police officers to 1 lieutenant, 1 sergeant, and 3 police officers. So there would be a reduction of 4 police officers. And again, that's directly related to retirements and other attrition activity. The monthly cost for this new one-year agreement, and I'll explain in a minute why we've chosen to only limit this to a one-year extension. The monthly cost would go from $102,516 down to $37,042.10. So that is it would go to $65,473.90, which is a $37,000 reduction per month, or $444,000 reduction per year. As you guys are all familiar and aware, throughout the entire country, law enforcement agencies continue to work through what has been a nationwide shortage of police officers. What we've seen, not only in our region, but in other regions of the United States, is that police officers or police departments have to prioritize basic patrol and 911 response to calls. And it's becoming ever challenging for those law enforcement agencies to do that based on the number of available police officers on the market. And that is no different than what the Metropolitan Police Department has realized over the course of the last, year. They face the same dynamic that other law enforcement agencies face. And what is presented as a reality to where we are relative to their ability to prioritize the MetroLink contract in comparison to basic police patrol measures in the broader community. What is important to us is the relationship. All three relationships are vital, not only from the actual patrol of Metro Transit, but also the collaboration through investigation, the technology sharing, all of the information sharing. What is often missed in our role within the region as obviously the primary public transportation system from a public safety standpoint is that we are married into with the broader law enforcement providers in the region. Public safety in our region is just that. It's a regional partnership. So our hope is through this year extension and what we've agreed to is that at the end of this year, we would be able to go back and renegotiate in a more timely fashion in order to add additional officers to the contract if they become available. The other dynamic that's faced by the city police department at this juncture is the move towards state control or state oversight. And so those dynamics are being put in place now. And the chief has asked us to work with him, to partner with him to understand what they're going through, with a promise that we'll revisit the manpower allocations later. So in summary, Mr. Chairman, I'm asking for approval for a one-year extension, Amendment 3 of the current contract, with a realization and articulation of manpower, and a realization and articulation of true cost, what we're actually going to get, we're actually going to pay for. And keeping this contract in place, which would initiate July 1 of 25 and expire June 30th of 2026. Our current extension with the city expires on June 30th, obviously this year. And that's why our appearance in front of your committee and our ability to move to the full board is of a timing issue for us to keep the contract in place.
Okay, is there any questions for Mr. Scott on this item?
I mean, yeah, it's kind of disappointing that we're losing some, like, what if we say no? I guess do they just think that, I guess we don't have an option?
Well, we're only going to be able to staff the contract with what they're able to give us. So we can't, we certainly have articulated that we need police and law enforcement on the system. I mean, that's a priority. However, the law enforcement agencies are partner agencies, and they will articulate what they will be able to provide to the contract. And so this was kind of a negotiated process. And my recommendation would always be to keep the relationships intact. What we've done is we've backed the contract, we've backed it back to a realistic cost. So we're only going to pay for what we're getting. But beyond the officers on the system, and they are on the system, the residual is hugely important. We've got enhanced support from the districts within the city and call responses. Obviously, we work very close with the investigative components of the city. We routinely share information with the city that is unrelated to Metro Transit, and we've been successful in helping the city police solve numerous incidents that are not related to Metro. So I would never recommend not entertaining or supporting a relationship with our law enforcement partners, knowing that we all have the same vested interest in the region, and that we all want to add police to the contract, but we have to do it through the process that they can handle. They're always going to prioritize 911 calls and basic response to calls for service.
Right. I guess I was just trying to figure out like what the options were. I mean, short of, again, I mean, we've been talking about it for years, but I mean, what it would even look like to even start to form our own police department if these partners can't provide, what we need, then what is our options, I guess? If they're, say if next year, they're even shorter,
Mhm.
and that it is so crucial, that we continue on the path that we've been on, with more policing and, with armed police officers on our system.
Yeah, that certainly is what you've articulated, Commissioner, is certainly a concern of both myself and Mr. Roach. What are the future trends? How do we adjust to those trends? We have components within our security structure that we control directly. Obviously, the security components, both from a contract perspective and an internal perspective. So we have bolstered the hours of contract security under the new agreement. Relative to our internal security staff, we have little to no turnover. We have gotten ample interest in any job openings that we've had here to fill with quality people. But beyond what we control from a security dynamic relative to human assets, we're making a huge investment in hardscape changes along Metro Link, which will have profound impacts going forward for the future of the light rail system here in St. Louis. We have made huge investments that you approved relative to closed circuit television and the real-time camera center that beyond question pays the biggest return on investment relative to the security structure itself. So we're trying to bolster and be as creative in the dynamic that we can control, all while understanding that with the relationship that we have to have through collaboration relative to law enforcement participation, we are somewhat at the mercy of those organizations.
Right.
Kevin, did they just graduate some new recruits this last week or so in the city?
I don't know about this last class. Within the last several months, I do believe a class has graduated where they are getting some participation. Look, the Chief Tracy has been visited with Talby and I on at least 2 occasions, actually 3 occasions, and he is very in tune to what the needs are for the public transportation system. He understands the dynamic that we work within relative to our own federal compact and how we have to align, our security model, and will do everything he can to support us. He is a very big public transportation supporter. This just boils down to he's trying to build his staffing back up. He inherited a depleted staffing level. He's had to traverse the state control conversation. There are just a lot of things going on, and they're trying to maintain a relationship and provide us with the services that they can, all while understanding that they're facing some dynamics that have to be dealt with within their department.
Right. And so what type of strain is this going to put on our in-house security? As Commissioner Cox has pointed out, the public is just at a point where they're feeling that they see these officers out there, and I hear it quite often. So have we gave any thought of what kind of strain that's going to put on your staff?
And so what we're doing to offset any negatives from this, as you recall, a couple of weeks ago, we came to the board with a revised memorandum of understanding with the St. Louis City Sheriff's Department, with a new sheriff. So we are working to gain more participation from them. Now that is going to be entertained on a part-time or secondary basis, but the deputies that we use on our system from the St. Louis Sheriff's Department are all post-certified as well. So when we talk about the need for the proper individuals to be armed on our system for the overall protection, we're trying to supplement the loss of the city police officers with the city sheriff's department. The new city sheriff has been very amenable to and understands the dynamic we face as well. And so we're already seeing increased participation from the sheriff's department at locations such as the North County Transit Center, Forest Park, Civic Center. We do understand that there's a budget dynamic to this and that we have to use the resources, the law enforcement resources, when and where they make the most impact. Vernon Summers, who's the director of security, and his team, they do a very good job at analyzing and understanding when and where to use extra law enforcement. So I think although this is certainly what we don't want to see relative to the St. Louis City Police Department, we are managing the dynamic behind the scenes where I think we're trying to mitigate as much negative as possible.
Good, good. One last question. How is the municipal cooperation that we're getting on the east side from the program that we started with the municipalities? How's that going?
Yeah, we're seeing sustained participation. There's no question from the four municipalities and the sheriff's department. So that definitely has bolstered the law enforcement presence on the alignment. It's a secondary dynamic. So it's availability. It's what those departments have to offer us relative to overtime. But any additional law enforcement participation is a positive. At the end of the day, the law enforcement component of our layered security structure, that's the top component. That's the icing on the cake. I do not want to be dismissive or downplay the impact that our security teams make on a daily basis. And I've said this many times to the board, about 90 to 95% of our total security engagements and poor conduct mitigation efforts are done by security level employees and then complemented by law enforcement. So I have to give kudos to the team. Based on the rule book that we play within, they've been very, very creative in how to manage security on this type of transportation system relative to the parameters that we have to operate within.
Very good. And I know that you will stay on top of this. So if there are any other questions for Mr. Scott on this item?
Not a question, just a follow up to what you said, Herb. I agree that on the Illinois side of the system, as Kevin said, we do see this increase in presence of the secondary higher back presence with the police officers from Fairview Heights, Swansea, Belleville, and Shiloh, in addition to the sheriff's department. So there is a bright light here, but it's times that we're in, and so just want to make that comment that we are pushing forward on our side of the river as well.
Very good. Go ahead.
I'm
Mr.
sorry,
Chairman,
Chairman, can I make a quick comment?
Yes. Go.
Yeah, so I did want to note that the Chief Tracy, as Kevin mentioned, has been very proactive. He came in the office to talk about this issue. It was an issue that none of us really liked, but it's the reality. And by changing the contract, in other words, essentially saving money on that contract, we can move that money to other resources, and several of which Kevin mentioned. So some of the secondary and the sheriff's department. And I would remind you that the sheriff's department, we gave a safety award to the one officer in the Civic Center incident, and that was a sheriff officer who really acted bravely in that situation, saving the lives of many individuals, in my opinion. So that's a quality add, and by changing the contract slightly, gives us more resources to move over with officers we don't have on the city contract and make the investments in those other areas. But the chief, in the realization of having that meeting, he dedicated his staffing on a district level. So for instance, as we move through different districts in the city, when we call 911 or ask for help, we need that help to show up. So we reiterated the importance of that, so that when Kevin's team is doing those things and we need that bigger backup from full police, we were getting it. And so although I think we're all a little bit frustrated with the situation, I do appreciate the professionalism and proactivity. In other words, it's not being ignored by our partners. We're trying to work together through it. And I would also compliment the board and our organization for seeing this issue with staffing coming. So it means that those investments that we have made in gates, cameras, et cetera, are even seen, the more wiser, because we're using those elements to try to make up for, as Kevin mentioned, a force multiplier, where we're using in a scarcity of the resources of law enforcement. We know we have as many other resources available to us. So I think as an organization, we've been smart in our partnership, and the board has endorsed those ideas. So I think we're just being realistic about where our staffing is, but then changing the contract so we can reallocate some of those financial resources to put them in the places where they make sense. So I really appreciate the discussion, because it really helps us move to the level of information that we need to. Thank you.
And since we're on this subject and Talbot, you're speaking, I'm just curious, what does it take, to start looking at, or what does it take for bi-state to actually have its own force?
It would take an act of Congress. It would take an act of the Missouri State Legislature. It would take an act of the Illinois State Legislature and an act of St. Clair County. The
So is
city
that
of
like,
St.
would that be
Louis.
like a single bill, I guess, like where it's like, okay, the state of Missouri allows bi-state to have its own police force. They would have to pass Missouri, then a bill in Illinois, bill in St. Clair County, then it went to the Congress, correct?
Yes, sir, that's right. So it is a heavy lift.
Well, I mean, I
but it
guess it would
is.
start with this board. We would have to decide if that's something that we would want to go down, but I've seen, I've seen 1,000 bills that are way worse than that one pass. Cause that one makes sense. But I was just curious, if this board was ever interested in going down that path, because I know Kevin has said that, I don't want to mix up your words, Kevin, but you've said that maybe it makes sense. So because then we control our destiny and not always relying on what the city has, and we can actually help maybe the city to relieve some of their stress. But that's just my 2 cents, and I was curious.
Well, Commissioner Cox, I appreciate those comments, and believe me, that has been discussed, Mr. Scott and I, and Mr. Roach and I, many times. But I think it's even a broader issue than that. The reason why these departments are having these issues is the lack of people wanting to be involved in law enforcement. I know that personally, being a former officer. There's just nobody beating down the doors to get into the profession anymore. So if we were to go down that rabbit hole and start that process, I believe at the end of it, if we were successful, we are still going to be faced with that same issue of the lack of manpower, because I hear that's what's going on in St. Louis now. My concern is that I don't want these counties and cities to take advantage of us. We have invested a lot of resources and dollars into making a safer system, and we are helping them solve those crimes, as Kevin always reports on. They have to buy into this, and I understand they're all going through rough times right now, and it's kind of a regional thing, like we all know. But I think we just have to lace up the boots here and see what this next year brings, and then see what St. Louis can do to get their manpower back in up to speed.
Do we pay a little bit better than the average on the beat patrolman or cop, or?
I'll be happy to answer that, Mr. Chairman.
Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, so the cost that we pay is relative to their salaries. So there's not because we're not our own entity. When we contract with the law enforcement agencies, we receive that cost analysis from them, what it costs them to staff our contract.
Okay.
Very good. Any other comments or questions for Mr. Scott?
Chief Tracy has a full plate.
Yes, he does. Okay, hearing no other comments, I'll entertain a motion and a second to approve this item as presented.
So moved.
I
Second.
have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Thank you. Good discussion on that. And Mr. Scott, as always, I know you will stay on top of this and keep Mr. Roach informed. And like I said, a year won't be that long for us. And then when I'm sure we'll have some better answers maybe by then. Mr. Roach, is there any unscheduled business?
I have none.
Do you have a report?
I have a very brief report. Speaking of this subject, I have had a meeting with the new mayor of the city of St. Louis, and the police contract did come up. She was very honest about saying that she is kind of navigating what the exact relationship will be with the state oversight piece, but she seems fully cognizant that safety and security is the challenge of the city of St. Louis. So I simply had a good, honest conversation with her. We didn't have any solutions. I just wanted to note to the board that it is a prime factor and one that we discussed directly in room 200 with that meeting. So I just wanted to be sure that you knew that. And also, in the same vein with the county executive, and we talk about these contracts regularly, and Commissioner Simmons has been really very active in being sure that the Illinois side with a supplementary contract, which was his brainchild after all, that we're pursuing every single resource that we can. I do think that they're helping. It's not the ideal situation, but I think what we need to do is continue to be as professional as possible and be sure that we are in a supportive and healthy relationship with our law enforcement partners. And I do think that is the case, and mostly reflected with Mr. Scott's leadership. So that's my very brief report. I really do appreciate all the time this morning. I do want to note that the board did request the update from Mr. Curran on the parallel project to the SPP, and that is the new fare revenue. So that is coming. We will have that. We have a briefing that will go out in advance of the ops meeting so that you all can review it. I encourage everybody, if they have some questions regarding that, to please ask me, ask Mr. Curran. It's complex, it's moving well, but it is very important. We did have some public comments about it, and I want to be sure we're being responsive. So that is at our next ops meeting, which I believe is the 22nd. So I'm looking forward to getting that out in advance so you all can have the opportunity to review it. So thank you very much.
Very good. Any commissioners have anything to add or questions for Mr. Roach? Hearing none, Ms. Bennett, would you call for the upcoming meetings dates, please?
Yes, as noted, the next Operations Committee meeting, as well as the Audit, Finance, and Administration Committee meetings will be held on Thursday, May 22nd, beginning at 8:30. And the next Board of Commissioners meeting will be held on Friday, June 20th.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Roach, is there any reason for an executive session?
We have no reason. It would be good to go in, and I think we're set.
Very good. Hearing that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, very good. Everybody have a good rest of the day and the rest of the week.